Hello and welcome to another edition of Political Insider. I'm your host, Herald-Tribune political editor Zac Anderson. With me today is Congressman Vern Buchanan. Congressman Buchanan is a Republican from Longboat Key who was first elected in 2006. He is currently the only member of the Florida delegation who serves on the powerful House Ways and Means Committee. Congressman Buchanan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate the opportunity.
Really happy to have you here. I'd like to get right into the big political news over the last week, and that's been Donald Trump's efforts to try and unify the Republican Party now that he's the nominee. He's had a bit of a struggle with it. Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, has gotten a lot of attention for saying that he hasn't been ready to endorse Trump at this point. And, there's other Republicans out there who have kind of laid back a little bit. I know that you've expressed some reservations about him in the past. I think you told me at one point that you thought he was a little bit too boastful about his wealth. But now that he's the nominee, my understanding is that you're going to go ahead and support him. Can you tell us why?
Well, I would just say in terms of this week with Paul Ryan, he is coming up Thursday, and he's going to ideally meet with members. I'm going to plan on trying to meet with him as well on Thursday. So I think you'll see a lot of this get consolidated the next 30 days, and I think a lot in the next week.
Right.
I wasn't, I originally, as you know, supported Jeb Bush.
Sure.
Jeb was a friend. I worked with him when he was governor. I was chairman of the Florida Chamber. So I felt a need to support him. I thought he was going to be a good candidate, but I originally didn't think Trump would get in. Then when he got in, I didn't think he'd be able to stay in.
Right.
But the bottom line is the people selected him. It's a democracy. In terms of this region, he won by 20 points. He won every county in the state other than Dade County, 66 out of 67. Sure. So, it's the people, their desire, and so I'm going to support their wishes.
Okay. One reason that people have been hesitant to get on board is that he said some pretty controversial things regarding Muslims, Hispanics, other things. Is there anything about him that gives you pause, any of his positions at this point?
Well, I think there's obviously a lot of different things he has said. There's no question about it. But I think as we come into general, it'll get consolidated. And, the idea, I've been out there, you get out there and you say hundreds and different things, and maybe you misspeak one day or misspoke. But I think, obviously, a lot of people have heard a lot of things he's said, but he's had solid support in Florida.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, that's the system, that's the game we play, and he won it decisively.
Okay. And, there's been some questions, some pundits have kind of thought that he starts at a disadvantage because, he doesn't have as good a numbers with kind of these swing voters, independents, with Hispanics. There was a new poll, though, that came out in Florida today that has Trump and Clinton essentially tied in the state. Florida has historically had very close elections at the presidential level. Would you expect that to continue this year?
Well, I just see he has been hit by probably $50, $100 million worth of negative ads in various states, a lot in this state. I don't know if it was $20 or $30 million, but he won by 20 points and somewhat a popular senator.
Sure.
So I think that, most people their numbers would drop, but like you said, there was a poll out today where he's even in Florida. I'd be very concerned if I was Hillary.
All right. Well, we could talk about the presidential race all day, but there's a lot going on in Congress that you're involved in. One of the big issues recently has been this Zika virus, which is very concerning for a lot of people, causes birth defects in pregnant women. There's a fight over funding, efforts to find something to combat the Zika virus. President Obama has asked for $1.9 billion in funding. Members of Congress have kind of so far been hesitant. Some have said they want to see more of the president's plans. Some have said that they're concerned about approving new spending. You have kind of broken with them and said, I think this spending needs to be approved right now. Do you think that there's too much ideology, too much politics going on this issue right now?
Well, I think there's 100 cases in Florida.
Yeah.
I think we've got to take it very serious. Ebola, we have about $600 million left from that, so that can be rolled into it. But Florida's ground zero, and the bottom line is that with the summers we get mosquitoes. A lot of it, there's some concern about Puerto Rico bringing it in.
Sure.
So I think we need to come together, and I think part of the reason why people like Trump have been successful, or Bernie Sanders, they want an outsider because Washington is dysfunctional.
Right.
And so I felt like I needed to take a leadership position on that. And we're very strong for it. And we're going to meet with the governor tomorrow to talk about a strategy about how we can even come together more in Florida in terms of Democrats and Republicans.
Do you see House leadership moving on this? I mean, coming towards your position on this?
I think they will. I think at the end of the day, that's where we get. I need to visit with them this next week. I got a busy week, but head up to Washington today. But I'd say in the next week or two, I'll be spending quite a bit of time talking about Zika and the need for the funding.
Okay. Another big issue that you've been working on is the heroin epidemic across the country. And here in Florida, Manatee County here in Southwest Florida is a big hotspot for this. We've had a lot of overdoses, a lot of deaths actually from heroin. It's a big issue. Congress has been working on legislation, bipartisan legislation, to try and combat this. Hasn't passed yet. What are your thoughts on this? I think the bill basically devotes some more money to various grant programs for addiction treatment and prevention. Do you think that Congress is going to pass this, and do you think it'll be enough to make a measurable difference in this issue?
Well, it kind of started with all the pill mills. We had 1,300 pill mills. We closed a lot of those down. I was able to help lead some of that effort. But now it's turned into much more heroin. The increase in overdose deaths, 900%.
Wow.
And Manatee County is at the epicenter per capita in terms of that. And as you know, I do a lot of town hall meetings, and I can tell you, I've had mothers come to me and fathers and basically crying, what are you going to do about the kids? They're dying in the street. And so we're going to do everything we can to push. We got two good bills we're pushing, and the Senate's got a bill, and the House has got a bill.
Right.
I think they're somewhat comparable, but we expect in conference they'll come together. And hopefully we'll get that done in the very near future.
Yeah, there's been some differences. I guess the folks on the Senate side have said the House bill doesn't go far enough, but you think that you guys can work something out?
Well, it's going to go to conference, and we'll get hopefully the best of both worlds, but I'm pretty confident it's going to get done. In fact, I've got a hearing, I think it's next week, on the subcommittee that I chair. We're going to talk about heroin across the country, and obviously I'll be focusing on Florida, but we want to get more resources and more education out to voters about actually what's going on with heroin. It used to be in Manatee County you could buy a pill for today it's about $30 to buy oxycodone type pill, but you can get heroin for $10 a bag. So it's a big issue. A lot of it's flowing in from Mexico.
Kind of in conjunction with this, there's legislation that could get approved later this year on criminal justice reform is a big issue as well at the state, local, and federal level. And my understanding is that there's bills that are moving through the House and the Senate that would potentially kind of reform the system to allow maybe not have as many mandatory minimum sentences, to maybe have lighter sentences on non-violent offenders. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think that, some people are concerned that that's, being soft on crime, and that's one reason that this type of reform hasn't happened in the past. Do you think that that has a chance of going anywhere?
I think you have to take a look at it. Look what's happening in Colorado and Washington, for example, where they've legalized marijuana.
Sure.
So I think the whole system needs to be clearly, we need to take a look at it, and that'll come up, I think, later in the year, like you mentioned.
Okay. And you're very involved in business issues. I know you have some legislation out there to promote small businesses. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, the bill that we introduced last week, I guess it was the week before last, is just helping small businesses lower their tax rate, because right now corporations pay about 8 or 9% less than small businesses do. The average small business across the country pay almost 50%. Corporations are at 35. It's the highest rate in the world, even for them. There's some discussion about lowering it to 28 or 25%. But my bill basically will give parity, that a rate for small business wouldn't be any higher than big corporations.
Okay.
So we're looking to push that through. We've got a lot of outside groups that are pushing it. So that's what I came to Congress for, because at the end of the day, it'll help simplify things for them, lower their rates, and the goal is create more jobs and grow business activity.
And the economy is a huge issue right now, as we see in the presidential election, so hopefully that'll move forward. Congressman, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you again for joining me here
Thanks
today.
for the opportunity.
I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
And thank you all for tuning in. Please join us again next week for another edition of Political Insider.